the forest. He wanted to come back to Montana so bad, but he didn't quite make it this time. Thank you very much for coming. I'm trying to keep it together, but I'm losing it already. um, he was many things to many people, and I was lucky to live with my best friend for over half a century. Not everybody can say that. So I know you all have stories about him or remembrances of him, and I'm hoping that we can share some of those today. I have lots of friends here that have helped put this together, and lots of good cooks who have helped put some food together for us to share later. We have some special people today. We have Kevin Red Star, who's Steve's Crow brother from Montana. We have Gladys. Where's Gladys? Gladys Folk, who's his Sac and Fox sister from Oklahoma, and her two daughters, and they have been the very good cookers today. And we've got a son and a husband in that group too. Sorry, Bull. Some old friends. I have high school friends visiting that we had planned this a year ago, and we weren't planning to have it for this occasion, but we all turn 80 this year, so we're going to celebrate our 80th birthdays tomorrow. Many of you know Steve from the college. Many of you know him from other places. We have his friend Ed and wife from LA, long-term photographer friends. His best friend's brother, also photographer from LA. And I have to introduce Casey. He's our first surrogate kid. We have collected a lot of kids over the years, and several of them are here, but I won't say all their names. You guys know who you are. Anyway, we tried to make a talking stick. And what I'd like to do is invite people up to tell stories about Steve. I hope that you have a story that you can tell. He loved the woods, and the wife of the forester who helped us with our last logging that makes our woods look as nice as they do today is here to share with us as well. I don't know where to start. Steve and I met in Nebraska in 1966. He was from New York, upstate. I was from California. And years later, my cousin, who did all the genealogy of the family, told us that the day we met was also Steve's dad's birthday, which I thought was pretty unique. We always said his dad was up there putting us together. So maybe he was, who knows. Anyway, you probably know our story. We got married, lived in San Francisco, we moved back east, we moved back to California. Steve went back to art school at San Francisco Art Institute, where he got his undergraduate degree in art. Then we sold our house, moved to Montana, came to the woods until we found a house to buy. We lived in Northridge for 3 years while we looked for our land. We found the land, but it hadn't been surveyed. And the next year we looked at it again, and it had been surveyed, and we could tell what it was, and we liked it. And at that time, it hadn't been logged for probably 80 years. It was just dense forest that you couldn't see through. And over the years, we've logged it 3 times now, and in an effort to make it a versatile forest that's good for recreation, that's good for animals, that has a variety of trees. And I really feel like we've done a pretty good job at this point. Steve later went on to school at California Institute of Arts in Valencia, where I met his friend Ed. He subsequently got a job at UCLA, where he was in the art department for many years. And although he was not a teacher per se, he was the guy that the kids all went to have their critiques before they went to their classroom critiques. And he could nudge them in directions that helped them with their vision and also help them survive their critiques in the classroom. He retired in, I think, 2005, and came up and spent summers on the land and loved being here and loved just being in the woods and visiting people. I followed it 5 years later, and finally we were here enough time that we could actually tune the place up, and we're pretty happy with what we've done now. So I hope you all enjoy being here, and I would like to know if anybody has a story they'd like to start. Anne?
No pressure.
No pressure. Just come on up and talk. I yield the stick to you.
Yeah, I need that stick.
Like an ice cream cone. I tell everybody, pretend like it's an ice cream cone. Sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't. How do you do this? How do you do this? I don't know. No one understood me quite the way that Dad did. And he's gone from this plane. I know he's here. I know he's visited other people too. But it's really hard to not be able to go up and get a really big dad hug. He gave the best bear hugs. I think probably everyone here knows that. So, my uncle over there, Uncle Kevin, told him about the teepee. I'm sure there's things that I don't know and then I don't remember. But in the 6th grade, I went to Creston School. Thankfully, it was only the 6th grade. Most of the kids there had houses with roofs and doors and flush toilets and showers and clothes that were washed in a washing machine. I smelled funny because we only got to have a shower, like, once every few days. And I smelled like wood smoke. And I didn't go to my own house after school. I went to other people's houses. So I was, what was I? I was a bum or something like that because I did that. But these normal kids, they went to their mom and dad's house after school. And what my home was a teepee, a beautifully pitched teepee. Not all teepees are pitched equally. But Dad was taught, Mom and Dad were taught how to pitch a teepee properly so that the water doesn't drip down on the inside when it starts to rain, and the smoke will go up through the opening in the top instead of filling up the small building. It was 18 foot in diameter. And it was, Dad always said, people say, well, how did you do it? Because we spent we wintered over in this incredibly well engineered tent. And he always said to people, well, you start in August. And Mom sewed a liner. We learned that having a liner in your teepee is a big help for a lot of reasons. And we had 2 large plastic barrels that we kept water in. We would carry water. We carried everything because there was no running water, i.e. there was no flush toilet. But we had a lovely toilet seat. Dad fastened 2 pieces of lumber to trees that were just the right distance apart. And to those 2 pieces of lumber, he screwed on a toilet seat at just the right height. So, although we were essentially going in a hole between a couple of trees. It was quite comfortable. It was fine. And it got colder, as winter approached, and we had a fire ring in the middle, just like you would imagine, a circle of stones, and that's where we built our fire, and that's what kept us warm for a while. Then it got a lot colder, and it started to snow, and that little ring of fire wasn't doing such a good job. So we graduated with the help of our good friend Jim Marshall. He's one of my other dads. I have 3 other dads. They're all named Jim. Jim Marshall, Jim Hayes, and now my father-in-law, Jim Maddock. So Jim Marshall helped us build a stove out of a barrel, an oil barrel or something, and then we had a smokestack going up out the middle of the teepee, which was pretty high class. And those plastic barrels that we carried water in, well, they would get water on the top. There was there was a spigot on one side and then a sort of an inlet on the other side. And the water would gather around. And on the back of this barrel, approximately that big around, the part of the barrel that was closest to the fire almost started to melt, and the part that was farthest away, the water would freeze. So it was an experience I wouldn't trade for anything in the world, because hardly anyone has been through that I know or that I meet. And although those kids made fun of me and I stunk and I went to somebody else's house after school and all kinds of things, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And some of my best memories are in that teepee.
What did you read to us?
I wasn't very good at reading out loud. I stumbled in school. It was really hard. And my mother, the teacher, said, "Well, we know what to do about that. You're going to practice at home." So, to the light of the kerosene lantern, every night I would read out loud to my parents. We didn't have a TV. We didn't have video games or cell phones or anything like that. We did have a battery-operated radio, though, and we did listen to the Texaco Metropolitan Opera on Saturdays on our battery-operated radio in the middle of the woods in Montana.
What did you read?
But the series of books that I read aloud, one was called Top of the World, and it was about Inuit people and the way that they had lived traditionally in the very, very, very far north reaches in a very cold climate. We could identify it when it got to a certain point. We also read Robinson Crusoe. So some adventuresome stories, and I got really pretty good at reading out loud. Like I said, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. We should write a book, Mom.
Yeah, we should.
Anybody else want to take a turn with the stick? Ethan Hayes.
Hold it really close. Okay. Well, just to start off by saying, even on an occasion like this, in the midst of sad feelings, I still feel so incredibly blessed and grateful to have had the Lehmers in my life. They are such phenomenal human beings. And I'm very grateful to know them. And as Steve was fond of saying, he knew me, when I was in my mom's belly. So the Lehmers have been in my life since day one for me. And obviously I'd see him here in Montana, and then when I went to college, I went down to Southern California, not far from where Steve and Kathy live on Beretta Lane. And so it gave us the opportunity. We'd hang out, like, you know, I'd go over there, I'd do laundry, I'd spend the night, we'd watch movies, whatever. And every once in a while, you know, we'd get bored. Steve came and picked me up from school one day. It was on the weekend. I'm like, oh, let's go for a drive. So, like, where are we going to drive? Oh, let's drive north. Let's drive towards Oxnard. What's in Oxnard? Tacos are in Oxnard. Let's go find the best taco in Oxnard. Great. And so we just got in the truck and started driving. And along the way, of course, we're taking back roads the way Steve likes to. And so we were on some winding back road, and we had pulled over to take a leak. And we were up on this beautiful little hill, and there were these beautiful oak trees up there. And I was, you know, in whatever, I was, 18, 19 years old, and I don't remember what it was, but I was spinning out about something. Something was going horribly wrong. And I was like, Steve, what should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? And Steve just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, you know, Ethan, sometimes what you need to do is put your feet in the earth and your butt on the ground and your back against a tree and stop trying to figure things out. And if you do that, you might actually figure some things out. And that's exactly what we did. We kicked off our shoes and we sat down on the ground with our backs against one of those oak trees. And a few minutes later, everything was magically okay. And that story, to me, it so perfectly encapsulates what was so special about Steve. He had this incredible ability to disguise deep wisdom in a joke, so you would actually remember it. And it was this gift that he had, just thinking about that. Put your feet in the earth, put your butt on the ground, put your back against a tree, and stop trying to figure things out. There's deep wisdom in that statement. There's deep wisdom about our connection to the earth and trusting your intuition and being present for your life. And it was delivered with this overflowing warm heart and a smile on his face. Look at this guy. How could you not love that face? And that story has just always stuck with me. I told Steve that having him in my life was like having your best friend and your dad rolled into one person, because he had this wisdom of a life fully lived, but he would share it the way that a friend would, so you could actually hear the things that he was saying, and they stay with you. And these things have stayed with me, and I know they always will. And I know that Steve is here with us right now, and he always will be. And I'm so grateful to have known him. Thank you.
Who's next? Ed?
Hi, everyone. I met Steve in, I guess, 83 at Cal Arts, and he was like a big brother to me at that point. He was a returning student, as was I. I had taken a few years off and was coming down from Sonoma County, and he was coming back to the city from LA, and so we were both really kind of strangely out of place. And I really looked up to him. anyway, I left the country for many years and came back. And when I came back, Steve was probably the first person that I reconnected with, and he was really a tremendous support, and somebody I could really look up to and respect. And there's just too many stories, but to make a long story short, he was I think as a photographer, I've never been very good at taking pictures with other people. I kind of need to be alone to really drop into a space where I can really see. But I could always take pictures with Steve. He understood. He was one of the only ones who did understand. And you know, he was kind of like my best buddy for 40 years in the arts, and I don't have any chance of replacing that. It's a tremendous loss for me. But I still feel like he's out there with me when I'm taking pictures, and you know, the consciousness continues, and he's still out there somewhere, and so I continue to walk with him, and he's someone who really, he told me about how his experience with the Crow tribe really taught him to shut up and sit down and listen, really deeply listen. And I think he somehow figured out how to also see very deeply and look very deeply. And not many people have that. And so when you look at his work, slow down, really look, because we still have that. And I'm hoping I can help James Sterling put together something in LA, another memorial maybe here in February at UCLA, so I hope I'll see some of you there. And anyway, I feel paralyzed up here too. I know what you're talking about. I'm grateful to Steve too, because I don't think I teach photography for a living, and I think I may never have really gotten that first job without Steve's help, and so I'm very grateful. And so, who am I going to put on the spot here next?
I think we're going to put Gladys on the spot.
Gladys. Okay. I'm so happy to meet so many of the people Steve always talked about today.
I've been calling Steve my brother since I was about 13 years old. He came home with my brother one time for Thanksgiving, and we fell in love with him. He was so funny. He was taking pictures all the time. I'd never met someone who did that. But he said the following summer he wanted to bring his wife and daughter with him. And he did. We met Annie when she was just a little tiny thing, and we had to carry her everywhere because of the red ants. And she was so darn cute. Still is. But he took part in some Native American ceremonies with my brother and my dad, and we are so proud of him because he never faltered. He finished the ceremony, and it was in Oklahoma. The sunshine is like, the summer days are like brutal, like
heat index is over 100 usually. At that time of the year, it was like in July. And he danced in the hot sun with my brother and my dad. And he jumped this hill that some men couldn't do it. And the ceremony was over for them, but he finished every time he did it. And there were just so many stories. I mean, he took me to California with him when I was 14 years old. And Annie was turning 6.
How many places have you been?
I had been in maybe 2 counties in Oklahoma. And that's the farthest I ever went. And he said I was a good traveler. I guess I didn't complain very much.
I think you were scared the whole time.
No, I wasn't afraid. For some reason, I just wasn't afraid. It was Steve. But, oh yeah, I was afraid. One night we stayed in, we made it to Grand Canyon just as they were closing. And somehow Steve knew where to go where we didn't leave the park that night. And he parked the car, and I slept in the car, and he slept in a sleeping bag in front of the car. And I was so scared. This little 14-year-old skinny kid from Oklahoma, never been anywhere. I just knew that my brother was getting eaten by snakes in front of the car. But we woke up the next day, and he took some amazing pictures of the sunrise in Grand Canyon. And then we came on and we stopped in Yosemite and threw snowballs at each other, brushed our teeth in a clear stream, and finally made it to California. It was so fun. That's where I met Casey for the first time. And Steve built me a bed so I'd have some place to sleep. And he worked so hard on that, and it was really comfortable. But before he got it completed, I don't know what he did. I don't know if he was having trouble with it or what, but he got really frustrated. And he threw that hammer into the neighbor's yard. And I saw him do that, and I was like, oh, well, go this way. And he eventually got the bed made. But there were just so many stories, and he's just, throughout our lives, he always came back, and whether it was for a holiday or he gave me away once in marriage. And I just have, yeah, and then he took me back. But that's fine, Steve.
Thank you, Gladys. I'm trying to go chronologically here.
I'm thinking chronologically. I'm trying to. So, I don't know. Anybody want to volunteer? Or do I have to call on you?
I will, Kat.
Oh, Neva. Okay.
You've got stories.
So many stories. Wasn't sure I could do this, but I also know I have to do this. I'm another one of Steve and Kathy's adopted kids. I'm very fortunate to not only have a sister, Anne became my best friend and sister when we were 12 years old. And she left Creston School and came to Swan River School, where she smelled better, I think, by then. I was born and raised here in Big Fork. I lived over on Alpine Acres with my parents, and Anne started going to school there when we were in 7th grade. And not only did I inherit a sister, but I inherited another mother and another father. And I was also one of those folks that Steve told me to put my butt on the ground and sit against a tree more than one time. I thought I was the only one. I moved out of here when Ann and I were 13. Actually, we were only together for a very short time, but they're my family, and we stayed in touch. And the summer before I moved over to Billings with my family, I'm still, as a parent, I don't know how my parents let me do this because I'd only known Ann for like 6 months. And they put me in a car with Steve and Kathy, in a Volkswagen bug, with Steve and Kathy and Ann and a big dog and a big ice chest. And we spent a month on the road going to California. And they introduced me to, I was a Montana girl. You know, I didn't know anything about art or theater or photography or garlic. So many stories, but I know this is one of Steve's favorites, so I have to tell it again. We were in San Francisco, and there was a garlic festival, and they took us to a theater there, and they played a movie called Garlic is Better Than 10 Mothers, while roasting garlic in the theater and in the lobby. And during intermission, Ann and I we didn't want popcorn, but we each ate a whole rose of garlic. So I'm sure we were very pleasant in the car on the next leg of our journey. But yeah, Steve and Kathy have been parents to me. They've been grandparents to my children and great-grandparents to my grandson. My kids grew up coming here in the summer. I grew up coming here in the summer. I, would run away from home when I needed a break from my family, when I had small kids, and I'd come here. And that was one of the times Steve said, put your butt on the ground and your back against a tree. And still married to my husband after 32 years, so it must have worked. Anyway, I love him. I'm going to miss him so much. It's so great to see all of you people here. I've heard so many stories about so many of you and gotten the chance to know so many of you. And Steve created a family. He didn't have friends. He had brothers and sisters and children, and that's a huge. I'm very honored to be part of that family. Thank you.
I can say a few things.
Kevin? Okay, Kevin. Good. Thank you. Oh, you're smart to sit in the shade.
Hi, everybody. Hey, why don't everybody stand up and stretch a little bit? We sat a while, too. Yeah. Just get up, just stretch a little bit. Yeah. I'm sure Annie and Kathy are just so thrilled and honored for you guys to be here. This is really, really quite a gathering. I feel Steve here right now. Yeah. Yeah, my name is Kevin Red Star, and I first met Steve and Kathy in San Francisco. Well, Steve and I were students at the Art Institute in San Francisco. I was a young kid, fresh out of Crow Reservation. I'm saying, what the heck am I doing here, And Steve was from back east, I guess. You guys were from Vermont or Nebraska.
New York.
Yeah. And we started, we just didn't really hit it off, but we just kept kind of running into each other. And he would ask me where I was from, and I said, I'm from Montana. I'm Crow Indian from the Crow Reservation, southeastern part of Montana, central. And then, gosh, you just kept, running into each other. We probably have coffee together at the Art Institute cafeteria, and pretty soon we got to be quite close as friends. And so, gosh, I remember when Annie was probably about 3 or 4, 5. She was very, very young, and that one year, that first year, I went back home here to Montana and visiting my mother and father. They always had roast and buffalo meat and elk and stuff in the freezer. So before I left, my mom says, "Why don't you take the roast to back to school and share it with some of your friends?" And I said, "Exactly, that's what I'm going to do." And so I took it, and I took my the elk roast back to San Francisco, and I gave it to Kathy. I said, "Cook it just like you would roast beef, roast like a beef."
And to this day, elk is my favorite meat.
Yeah, and after that, Steve says, "I never had this before." That got him really curious. He wanted to come to Montana. Then I told him, I said, he got excited. I said, "Okay, we have this gathering every third weekend in August. It's called the Crow Fair. It's a large encampment that lasts a whole week, where there's about 2,000 teepees that are set up, and there's parades every day, and dances, daytime dances and evening dances, and in the afternoons they have all Indian rodeo and all Indian horse races." And so I was kind of building that up so he'd come visit me, and sure enough he did. And the first year he didn't bring the family, but the next year he came over, and I remember Annie was at we were at the camp, and all the little kids were all dressing up with their crow costumes. They're getting on a float, and some were on horseback, and they got her up. They got her all dressed up. They found an outfit dress for her. She was all decked out on the float, little blonde girl with braids, she was right there. And she loved it. She was on the float, yeah. Probably about 100 degrees too, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and I remember, she doesn't want me to say this sometimes, but I remember Steve and I have some friends that came over from Oklahoma and Idaho and Washington State. They were visiting in my teepee. We're all sitting around just welcoming each other and telling stories, joking to each other, just having a really great time. And Annie was playing outside with with the little girls outside. She comes in and says, "Well, Dad, where's all the Indians?" You got to remember, this was Crow Fair, thousands of Indians. She didn't see anybody with feathers or anything. So, "Well, Dad, where's all the Indians?" Oh boy, I had to say that. But I've always remembered that Steve just kind of shook his head and we had a good laugh about that. Well, throughout the years, I guess when they bought the place here, the land, they stayed in a teepee, and I didn't get the whole details of that, but I was telling my uncles that my best friend from California, they bought some property in Big Fork area, and they're staying in a teepee through the winter. They're what? Yeah. It gets about 20 below here. Yeah. But they had it all, fortified, I guess, and cozy. They got each other. But yeah, and I was telling that to one of my cousins, Henry Brightings Jr. He said, "Well, they're real Indians now." And he would say, "I bet you can't get any family of crows doing that in one winter," he said. Well, these guys have done it, yeah. But anyway, then they've been coming to Crow Fair quite regular, and I come here about every other year, visit the family. And one year, I said, "There's got to be something more to this, because we consider ourselves brothers." And so one time they were visiting, and I kind of surprised him. I invited one of my good friends. His name was Rabbit Nojeskin. He's a fellow artist, but he's a healer. And I said, I want you to conduct a ceremony where my good friend here, Steve Lehmer, and we want to be brothers, and initiate us into this, into the brotherhood of Kevin Red Star's family. And he said, we can do that. And we had to take a sweat, but
at the time we both had heart issues. I was recovering from a heart attack. I think it was my first one, and he had some something. But anyway, going on. But anyway, we still we got the ceremony as adoption ceremony. We completed that. So this is my family here. And she's my daughter, my granddaughter, and my sister-in-law here, sister. And so we've been close. We've been close forever, I have to say. And throughout the years, I travel. My art took me all over the world. I've been so fortunate and lucky. A little kid from Lodge Grass Reservation. And just persistence really, really helps. I'm sure everybody does that too. And I remember he would bring friends to introduce me to. I remember Casey when he first came. I don't remember the exact time, but I saw this little teenager. And I said, wow, what he's doing here? He's showing him the sights, showing him the world, the wild Willie West. Yeah, I remember we were quite a lot younger.
Yes.
I think I still had black hair. Yeah, but yeah, throughout the years we've traveled a lot together around Montana and California. And but when he was teaching, I said, "You're teaching at UCLA. Are you the photo department's head photographer?" He says, "No, Kevin." He says, "I'm one of 9." I said, I thought, every university and college has one photographer. No, there were 9 in there. That's how big the university is. Yeah, so I thought that kind of threw me a little bit. But we've always been friends. I take them to my art shows when they're in California, and we've been going to. I have a show every year at the Autry in L.A. at Gene Autry Museum, and I saved 2 tickets for the dinner and for the premiere of showing of the new works, and these are my best friends, my family, so I invite them, and in turn we go to a restaurant every year, the one we haven't gone to. We've gone to a lot of ethnic, different country restaurants and cuisines
that aren't available in Montana.
Yeah. But it's been fun. I remember one year about 5 years ago, before the COVID hit, I think he was going through some issues too. Remember he had an operation, but my daughter, Sunny Sky, and I were at the show, and I called Steve and Kathy, and I says, I think I really have a need right now to see Pacifica. They said, "Ooh, the Pacific Ocean." Yeah. But they took us there. So we just wanted to touch the ocean. Because we're from Montana. We got to do that every year, every chance we get. And so we drug poor Steve around. Remember that?
Yeah, but he was.
I know, he was a trooper. Like we'd go to the beach, we'd walk around, and he would walk with us for about 10 minutes, then he'd go back to the car and rest. And we'd be out there, on the beach. But that's the kind of friend Steve was. And we didn't want to leave him home, and he didn't want to stay at home either, did he?
He wanted to go.
Yeah.
Always did.
But it was always fun.
And you were always generous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I remember when this not very long ago was it when I gave you the big painting? What was that, about 5-6 years ago? Yeah. I had this big painting. It's fairly big. It's only 48 by 60 inches. Yeah, and Steve, I'm going to give you this painting. He said, I don't know, that's kind of big. He said, and Kathy says, he's giving you a painting, Steve.
Take it.
Yeah. I was going to give it to him anyway, no matter what he said. Yeah, I know that guy. He said, I don't think I have a wall that would fit this painting. Yeah. What a guy, huh? But, oh gosh, I have so many things I want to say, and they're kind of escaping me right now. But it's so nice to see everybody. I've never seen you before. except for you. Yeah, and some of it just brief, Mr. Marshall there, and but I'm so happy that you guys came for my little family here. They're such great, special people. And Steve, when he took this place, it was special for him because this is what he liked. Yeah. I was sitting in my car and just kind of resting a little bit there, and I saw these two large pine trees. I just kept looking at them. I thought they looked like static. I thought they were just stationary. They weren't. If we just paused to look, they're gently swaying. Yeah, and I caught that. We forget about the aliveness of plants and trees and plants. And that was so special. Yeah. But I will still keep coming back here as long as I can drive. If not, I will have a driver.
You can fly from Billings to Kalispell.
I can now. Okay, good. I'll do that. Yeah. I have a gallery that has put me on in Kalispell. Not Kalispell, Whitefish. So I'll be coming in for that too.
Good.
Delivering art, doing some
Donna, are you listening?
arty things. Yeah. But as old as I am, I'm still hitting it strong. The art world. I have about 6 to 7 major museum shows I have throughout the year. And I've got about 5 galleries I produce and have shows every year. That keeps me busy. And I love it. This is what I was striving for. I could have been a teacher, but I just wasn't that type, And not the nurturing type. I just found this challenge in front of me. I can make this work. I can't make it work. This young fellow was asking me, which paintings do you especially particularly enjoy? I guess the one I enjoy most of all would be the ones that I had little challenges with, where I was hoping it would work and it's not working, so I have to either put it aside and paint on another piece and come back to it. And something that was lacking or missing would come about while I was working on a current piece. So I'll go back to the other pieces. Okay, I needed that. The composition is not quite right there. But it's fun, my art world. But like I say, I wanted to teach, but I just didn't have that. I just didn't have the nurturing where I can follow a young student in 4 years and follow them through and nurture them. I wanted that with me still. I guess I'm a little selfish. But some people can do that, but I wanted to be a full-time artist and just concentrate on what I'm doing. And it seems to work for me. And I'm happy. I have my ups and downs. Yeah, even when I was young, I'm one of the few artists that didn't have an extra job. I just depended on myself. And I didn't paint things that sold. I just produced. If it sold, great. I wasn't going to be comfortable and start producing the same thing over and over, which a lot of, so-called artists tend to do. But I just like to experiment and just grow. That's what the challenge is, I think, yeah. And when I think of Steve, this is what he does. He nurtures young minds, young people with their passion, which is photography. Not only the classroom, but he takes them out, just like I was saying about the trees. They change. He's a special friend. He's a lot younger than me, but he's got more wisdom and knowledge. No, not that bad, but yeah, he's. I'm a guy that say, okay, let's go have a beer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but he kind of works things out. He said, if I did this and this will happen, not me. I said, go do it. Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, when we were younger. He came visiting. He was doing Crow Fair. Oh gosh, this must have been at least 50 years ago, before my kids were born. And we went to this Indian bar. He was looking at this. Indian bars are tough bars. And I said, Steve, when we go in there, just follow me. Do exactly what I do. We're gonna go to the bar. We're gonna go to the middle of the bar. So bunch of just like that. Remember that Star Wars, that cantina? Same thing. Yeah, and he said when we order a beer, we're going to order a bottle, not cans. And so when you get the beer, we're going to get it, and we're going to turn our backs to the bar, and talk to each other, so we know what's going on here. Sure enough, we saw bottles flying back and forth. But we were young; we just kind of laughed at it. We didn't care. But I wanted him to experience that. That's part of the reservations, Depraved alcohol. What can you do to you? They have these bars right over the border, And but anyway, we had fun though. Nobody got hurt, but that was an experience. Yeah, that's a good anomalies like that. Cantina, yeah. But yeah, we took him to the mountains, saw our herd of buffalo, and went fishing in the Bighorn, Little Horn, Yellowstone River, and we just like. I used to take them to all the little swimming holes when we were kids. This is what we did here. When we went over, I showed it to him, and they were so tiny. I thought they were huge. Different. I thought it always looked like it's about 40 feet wide. No, it's only about 12 feet long, wide, with the widest part. But anyway, he had a sweat lodge with my uncle, Henry Bridewings, and his son, Junior, and his brother, Derry Dale, and some of the other uncles, and he survived. Those crow sweats are really, really tough, hot. I didn't encourage him. He did that, and I was really glad that he was able to do that. And he didn't brag about it. It's just something that he did, and he did it, And I said sometimes I said, if you have a chance, take a sweat in the wintertime and break the ice and just go in there, and cool off. I've done that once. It's wonderful. Yeah. I broke the ice about 3 feet square. I dunked myself in there. I got out. Everything was so warm. I can't believe it. Try that sometimes. Yeah. But anyway, I miss my friend. I always will. Yeah. We did a lot together. It's always been good and positive, except for that bar scene. Okay, anybody else there? I just had to go on a little bit here because I miss him so much, you guys.
Thank you, Kevin. That was really nice. You're welcome in LA anytime. Donna, we're looking at you.
You may use this chair if you wish.
Well, first of all, thank you, Kevin, for all those wonderful stories, and everyone who's shared today. I've heard so much of all of Steve's friends, adopted children, adopted extended family, and I've heard so much about all of you, and it's nice to meet you and put names to faces and stories. Steve was a great storyteller. I'm not so good, but I'll try. I first met Steve. I was new to the Valley in 1977. I was 5 credits shy, thanks to an incomplete and a poli-sci class that I had no interest in, really. 5 credits shy of getting my bachelor's from Stanford University in California, but I'd moved to Montana, and I had no intention of going back to campus to finish 5 measly credits of something I wasn't interested in. I found out there's a college in Kalispell, Montana, Flathead Valley Community College, that was fully accredited, and I could take a class there and transfer it, and voila, get my diploma and make my parents very happy. So I looked over the course offerings, and I thought, well, I always loved photography. First thing I signed up for as a freshman was Photo 101. And so I already had those credits in my resume, whatever it is, what do you call it? And so I looked and see if the college had any other photography classes, but they just had intro to photography, 101. And so I went and met with Steve, who was the photography teacher, and I said, I'd really love to take a photo class, but I've already had 101. And he's like, well, I've been wanting to start an intermediate class. So he worked out a deal with the dean where he had me as his only student in the intermediate class, and he worked with me one-on-one, and I finished my degree thanks to Steve's and Steve was based on that experience. He was then allowed to add another class at the college, so he was able to teach 2 classes. So it was kind of a win-win for both of us, and that was the beginning of our friendship. Annie was, what about, 10, something like that. And fast forward about a year, Steve got hired by the college to run the instructional media department. And he wasn't there for too many quarters where he realized he needed an assistant, because the colleges had classes all day long and into the evening. And he talked the dean into creating a position for an evening shift. And I answered the ad in the paper and applied for the job and go in for the interview. And Steve liked to tell this story, so I think Kathy probably wanted me to tell this story about my job interview at the college. I'm sitting there across from Steve, who I'd known as my photo teacher, and there's the dean of instruction and the director of personnel, and they're asking me, this is a clerical position, really. So they're asking me, I don't remember what, but one of the questions was, well, what is your typing speed? And I'm like, well, I'd taken typing in high school. This is pre-computers, okay? If you had an electric typewriter, it was really slick, So I was kind of baffled by that. I was like, well, I know how to type. I use all my fingers. And I think that got me the job. So we had a great time. I had the evening shift, but we overlapped. Steve would, come in the morning and leave at 5, and I'd come in at lunchtime and leave at 9. So we had that overlap in the afternoons, and really, we had a great time. I heard all of his stories. I heard many times. I know. I never heard the one about put your butt on the ground, though. I never heard that aphorism, but I wish I had. But I heard. Oh, excuse me, I couldn't be more embarrassed at all his little jokes. Don't step in anything soft, you do and you clean it up. That's another. If anyone said something complicated, he was but he was great with a joke. He was great with a story. He was great with nurturing his students and his friendships and all these relationships as witnessed here. And I feel really lucky to have been part of the Lehmer sphere for all these years. Oh, and then they moved to LA. I ended up 3 years later moving to LA, and I wasn't stalking them, but they really helped me. They broke the ice for me and showed me, the benefits of both worlds. I joke that we're bi-coastal. We have California and Montana, if there was a coast, flatter lake, I guess. But they. You were the only folks I knew in LA that really got what Montana was about. Now people know about Montana all over. It's the secret's out, but it was nice that we could share that mutual understanding of both worlds, and we had fun in LA too. We went to Dodger games and rooted for the Cubs. A lot of good restaurants, and spent time on your futon in Veretta Lane, and then when you guys moved to the Glen, boy, that was like the best of both worlds. There was a little bit of Montana in LA. I could see why you could
we've been there over
survive. Yeah. Anyways, I miss the guy. I was just shocked to hear that he's not be with us, but he is with us, as everyone has commented. But yeah, I'd love to have that big bear hug, but one more time. It's gonna have to be you gals. Okay.
We can do it.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Next.
Do we have any more volunteers?
I can.
Casey, okay. Casey and Kim.
I'll sit too. I'm Casey Meredith, and I met Steve 52 years ago. And when people mention my name, it sounds like I'm somebody special, but I'm not. But Steve could make you feel special. And Steve and Jackie. My father died when I was very young, and Steve's father died when he was young. And I think that's something that we had in common, that he treated people, everybody was special. Everybody, anybody that came into his sphere was worth paying attention to, and he did pay attention to, always. And asked me to tell one story about him, or well, about his work, really. He always said, tell me when you want to print, tell me when you want to print. And about 8-10 years ago, I was here, and I said, Steve, I think I'm ready to take a print now. I have a house in Portland, and I could take care of it. So I was here with my nephew from Los Angeles, Ross, and besides Ross, Steve is the only person in the West Coast that has met all of my siblings. Steve and Ross and I are the only ones that know who all my family is, or been with all my family. Because Steve got around, as you all know. Steve really did get around. So we were looking at prints with Ross, and he gave me a print that I chose of the Missouri River, because I've canoed on the Missouri a few times and liked it a lot. And he liked taking pictures of the river. And I took it home, and I have a really good framer now, and she used to work for the Portland Art Museum. Her name's Jenna. And well, for you in the art world, you know who Hokusai is, and for you not in the art world, you know those prints of the Japanese, the wave that's spilling over, and it's got all those little fingers to it. That was printed by a Japanese man named Hokusai. And Jenna had the privilege of printing, or framing a Hokusai print for the Portland Art Museum one time. And she said when I opened it up, it gave me shivers. And she said when I opened up this print that you gave me, it gave me shivers too. Steve's print. Steve's print gave her shivers just like the Hokusai did. And that's how strong his work was. It's a print that to me, it's a masterpiece. It's in my home, and so it's going to be Steve and the Lehmers. I was 18 when I met Steve, and my sister went to art school. That's how I ended up in San Francisco. Brought her here, or brought her there when I was 18. And we those are those old hippie days where you showed up at somebody's house and you stayed until you had a place to go, and they generously offered their home. And
How long did you stay, Casey?
well, I was known as the thing on the sofa for 2 years, about 2 years, I think. But I would pick up around the house sometimes, and I would try not to be just a total blob.
Tell us about Poison Oak.
Well, I react horribly to poison oak, so I stay away from it.
You found out the hard way because you pulled it out in the yard.
Oh yeah, in Mill Valley, it was in the yard. It was all over the place, and I would get in it frequently. We found there was a garden shed up above the house. I don't even know if you knew it was there. It was kind of covered over by all kinds of growth, and I was digging around. I'm a pretty good gardener guy. And I was digging around, I found that shed, and I ended up emptying it out and moving into it. Got off the sofa and stayed there for a little bit. But it's been my little sister since she was 4. They're incredibly generous people, and it's been wonderful. I don't think I have any other story to tell besides. Steve and I took a geology class. I have to mention that Steve loves just the earth. And we took the geology class at Marin Community College together. he loved just learning about stones and features, and I think that's what fueled a lot of his drives, was to just look at this great country, to just travel it and see it in all places, from top to bottom, sideways and back. He had a great love of seeing the country and enjoying the country, honoring it. Thank you.
Thanks, Case.
Sure.
Okay, Ken, are you ready?
Oh, let me say one more thing. I
okay.
forgot to say.
Kevin, read, please.
Yeah. This is Kevin again here. I lost my daughter about 14 years ago. Oh boy, you know, if you haven't gone through that, don't. But you lose your mind. I lost my mind. You know, and Steve was there. He came over and stayed with me for one whole week. Oh man, he kept me up. You know, held me up emotionally, spiritually. I wanted to say that he's got a big heart. That's why we are here, gathered here, because of a fine man. He's out there, he's watching us. Yeah. But I wanted to say that. I had to say that.
Hi. I'm Ken Grindy. Grew up here in Big Fork, and I was a kind of a latecomer to Steve's children. It's been a mere 17 years, 18 years or something like that. But the Lehmers and the Grindys have known each other for longer than that. Steve and my dad were close since when my dad came and built the deck on the house in the 90s. And it ended up really meaning a lot to me that Steve and Kathy both knew my dad. I had a tough relationship with my dad, and he came up here with me many years after building the deck to build the studio, and he was not in good sorts, and my dad was not in good sorts, and I'd help him out as much as I could, but he was pretty erratic and angry all day and not very productive, and I had kind of gotten used to that over the years. And then one day after he left, I was having swamp waters on the porch with Kathy and Steve, and they looked at me and they said, "You know, you're really patient." And no one had ever let me know that. No one had ever really sort of let me know that they knew this person and they knew all the complications of the relationship, and then they could still sit down and say, "Hey, you've really got qualities that is admirable, and we see what you're doing, and we see what this is." And when I lived in LA for 5 years and kind of had the Ethan experience a little bit, you know, decades later, going up and doing laundry and getting a dose of the Montana feeling up in the Beretta house, up in the tree house when LA was too much like LA. And I never really had a older guy in my life who was emotional and tender and like to talk about how much he loved things and how much he loved life and how much he was interested in art. And that was something I knew was special at the time, but I guess I'm just, you know, really acknowledging that was a very special thing to have dad figure who was kind of a softie and wasn't trying to be macho all the time. And Kevin was talking about how Steve would kind of just look at something for a while. He wouldn't dive right into it. He always used to, whenever I would get stuck on a problem, he would always go, well, do you try kicking tires? Just go in and kick tires, then go home. Go in and look at the work and then turn off the lights and go have lunch. Don't try to bang your head against the wall. It'll figure itself out. And whenever life was tough in LA, or even when life was going good, I would go and take a break and go to the hardware store with Steve and buy some kind of a nut or a bolt or a tool. And it's always the hardware store. And he always made me feel really special for doing things that I thought were second nature. I was always really into maps, and so I really got to know LA. And I'd show Steve a new shortcut, and that was like God level. Yeah. Every time I'd show Steve a new way to get somewhere, he'd go, "Wow, shit, kid, this is great. This is gonna cut 10 minutes off of this route." And we would just, it just felt like I painted the treehouse, and Steve treated me like I had built that house. He was so effusive, and just made me feel really special for doing the little tiny things. My sister Benta and I caulked the floor of the tar paper shack and did, I don't know, half of the ceiling. Didn't really even finish the ceiling. I think maybe actually Casey finished the ceiling, or something like that. But Mark did. And just for doing that, Steve was forever reminding us that we were heroes.
And it's no longer the tar paper shack.
It's now the little brown shack. That's right, because Kevin's stepson and nephew, got the right siding on the side. So there's just too many stories from over the years, but it's always been a respite to come up here and be able to build something with Steve and Jim and hang out with Kathy and having Annie come through Missoula these last couple of years has been so nice, and just having the Lehmers is such a special thing. And it is really sad and hard to not have Steve, and also from the first time I met him, I feel like he was so in love with life from having almost lost it at the first heart attack, that he was just like such a joyful presence to have around as a young person, to have an older person in my life who was just like, this is great, isn't life amazing, and look at that tree, and isn't this food good, and just enjoying everything so much and loving to just chat and hang out, and such a lovely vibration to have around. And it goes for Kathy too. That's all I got.
Do we have any other volunteers? Oh, good. Jim's going to talk. This is our neighbor, Jim Marshall, our adopted brother, friend, father, fix-it-all person.
Well, if we talk about stories, we're going to have to cut that short because I have to leave the country at the 1st of September. There's some that are come to mind, like 20 below zero and pulling the left front wheel assembly off the truck, off the plow truck, and you get several of those. One of my thoughts was Steve, as I was so impressed because he was such a perfectionist, right? He's over there helping me build a chicken house, and there's one thing that's maybe a 30-second off, and he wants to change it. So we had to have this discussion of, Steve, this isn't the Tabernacle choir building, this is a chicken house, so let's keep going. To me, Steve and the Lehmers are still all together, and always will be. I think the positive here today is, knowing Steve as long as I did, he will live forever no matter what your points of view are, because he will have affected everybody here positively, and I know it'll never go away from me.
Anyone else?
Well said. Right here.
Oh, Dan.
Hi. Good to see you.
Hi, my name is Dan. Good to be here. Lots of familiar faces and friends. I love Steve. Love him still. Always will, forever. And I heard about persistence from Kevin, and he was persistent. He was an artist, forever an artist. And he'd be even just talking small talk or about the weather or whatever, little details of life. But I saw his eye, and I saw his eye looking for the right composition in whatever he was looking at. And then he'd wander off and then take images of objects throughout our house or throughout our orchard. And that precision, that persistence was always there with every glance that he had and every time that he captured his vision. Whatever he looked at, he captured with precision and insight and masterful touch. And even though I've been studying similar things all my life, he reawakened in me that exquisite moment when you can capture it just right. And that will stay with me forever. That was a gift that he gave to me. And I'll never forget him.
Any other volunteers? Maybe people are getting hungry. I don't know. Oh, Carrie?
I know everybody's hot, so I'll make this quick. I think all the wonderful qualities everybody talked about Steve, immense human, but I gotta talk about his humor. I think all of us here who know him, I still love his humor. I'll never forget, I'm one of the newest folks here. You've known him much, much longer, but Kathy and Ann, we had dinner one night at the house, and they said, you gotta do the bird calls. And I will never forget the look on Steve's face. It was the best look. It was like, you're really gonna make me do this? But I know I gotta do this, but I'm gonna do this anyways, because he's just the best. And the other short thing I'll tell you, I know everybody's hot, is the one thing when I first met Steve that really took me, he's a perfectionist, he's a professor, he's highly educated. When he gets frustrated and he just lets the F-bombs fly, I would always make me chuckle because he was just, we love him so much. And, fantastic human, which will live on forever.
And I have to say that Ann and Carrie were married here in this spot last year in May. And this past April, Steve and Ann and Carrie and I all went to Hawaii for a week as a kind of a first year celebration of their marriage. And Carrie and Steve had some quality time while there, and I think they got to know each other a little bit, which was really nice. So some of the things near end of life were really positive for Steve. So anyway, one thing I wanted to say, I thought of, he was the director of the Art Center, Hockaday Art Center, for a while, and while there he instituted some things like children's art classes, a photography class. He brought in art from other parts of the country, but also did local shows, some of which were quite strong and traveled around the state. But his photography classes, like Donna said, went over then to the college with credit, and the college to this day still has a photography program. So his legacy lives on in a lot of ways that aren't too obvious. And I think that's a lot of what we could say about Steve, that he had an influence on people that is deep and lasting, but not necessarily totally overt. And me too, on me too. Okay, I'm going to say, let's draw this to a close and thank our lucky stars. We had good weather today, and we have for us a real treat. Our Sack and Fox family has fixed Indian food, ceremonial Indian food for us. And we're also going to have some other American food. We're going to have some of Steve's favorite food, one of which was potato salad. So instead of hamburgers, which he loved, we have some sausages and hot dogs. But I think you'll enjoy meeting each other again and sharing stories there on the deck. So I invite you all to come up and have some food with us.